Daughter's 2018 album, You Won't Get What You Want, is one of the darkest albums I've ever heard. And considering recent events that have been brought to light, returning to this album has been personally very difficult. However, I find that it is still one of my favorite pieces of music ever conceived. Many people in online music spaces have similar opinions. The method of understanding this album is somewhat faulty, however. I believe that we have to consider the band's entire history and discography and put it into that context. So, where should we start? Let's start at the beginning. Chapter 1. The Band. Daughters was composed of vocalist Alexis Marshall, guitarist Nick Sadler, drummer John Syverson, and bassist Samuel Walker. They had humble beginnings, originating in Providence, Rhode Island. While the group's dark messaging and aggressive music disqualified them from major commercial success, they were somewhat lucky. Their early works were reminiscent of Japanese noisecore bands, so they found some respect in the grindcore underworld. With that being established, let's dive into their music. Chapter 2. Daughters, self-titled EP, 2002. In 2002, Daughters released their first EP. While some see it as an uncomplicated, unsophisticated, humorous grindcore record, I don't. And this isn't me taking something too far. With this 4-minute record, Daughters experiment with unique guitar tones, elements of harsh noise, and foley. Not to mention, it goes hard as fuck. Sadler plays with ferocity, John Severson crashes cymbals like he has 8 arms, and Alexis Marshall screams like nobody's business. But then there's the song A Room Full of Hard Ones and No Place to Sit Down, which introduces a beautiful post-rock guitar passage with building noise. This isn't your average grindcore debut. It's a band that's willing to experiment with unique textures and elements of post-rock. So already, they're presenting huge sonic potential. While this album is lyrically not as great as their other works, there's a strange motif of being a ghost. I'm not exactly sure what it means. Daughters always made each album as if it was their last, so perhaps it's a reference to the consistent cycle of inconsistencies. This is my least favorite part of the Daughters canon, and it arguably is an essential to understanding the band's magnum opus. It establishes them as an aggressive yet progressive hardcore band, but there really isn't much to it at all. Chapter 3. Canada Songs. In the fandom of 2000's sasscore, those blaring alarm guitars have become iconic and synonymous with the band. The first difference between this grindcore album and the last is violence. Not just musical violence, but lyrical violence. Marshall writes, "All is malcontent, dismissing nature's process. Please slit your own throats." A great opening track. The next track, Jones from Indiana, introduces something rare for Daughters. At least at this time period. Absurdity? Even in the most chaotic Daughters grindcore songs, there seems to be some level of order. The lyrics in this track depict a conversation between a sales rep and a dog talking about the service abilities of a common woman. Now here is where I begin to take a critical lens at the music of Daughters. Their music, and rather hardcore music, has been and is still extremely misogynistic. It's also extremely disturbing with the recent news regarding Alexis Marshall, but I digress. We'll focus on that later. All the tracks on this album are frequently misogynistic and are extremely sexually depraved. I understand why some people, even who like grindcore, could be turned off by this album. It's too extreme. Continuing on this theme of sexual depravity, the song I Slept With the Daughters and All I Got Was the Song Written About Me opens with this line, "Spread your thighs like a cancer. Let me see what's inside." And it ends with walls of reverb guitar feedback, a clear reference to their 2002 EP's post-rock section. It's one of my personal favorites off the album along with Verbeach. The next track, And Then the Chuds Came, is more of the same. It does have some pretty unique imagery, with the starting line being, "If I cut off your arms and legs and wrapped you in some fucked up cocoon, would you still look at me?" It could imply a sense of shame to these degenerate instincts, or it could just be for shock factor. With Daughters, you never really know. Mike Morowitz' The Fantasy Fuck is an interesting track, as it could be a critique of capitalism. The story of the track is selling horses their own homes and returning to a lonely house, where a thermostat is your best friend. It also goes back to the theme of loneliness and shame established in And Then the Chuds Came. "Nurse, please prep the patient for the sexual doctor" implies that this overwhelming sense of sexual depravity is a sickness that must be treated by some sort of doctor. Some have described Alexis's later vocal delivery as like a sex doctor. We also have this layer of ambient noise that occurs on the back end with an electric kick drum. I Don't Give a Shit About Wood, I'm a Chemist is a track that makes a clear allusion between having an erection and wood. It also features some clean vocal layering from Alexis, which is signifying later artistic decisions by the band. Pants Meet Shit is just a funny track. Damn Those Bloodsuckers and Their Good Qualities is a track that goes back to that theme of shame in regard to those feelings of sexual depravity. The Ghost with the Most starts with a strangely bass-filled guitar riff devolving back into sasscore. This song has some of the most disturbing lyrics on Canada songs, including I Want to Make You Undress Through the Keyhole, which implies both perversion and sexual assault. In terms of analysis, there's not too much to say here. Canada songs has these great moments of reverbed beauty, but it's not that uncommon. If you want a better grindcore album with these same moments, I recommend the music of The Locust. The themes of Canada songs are feelings of sexual depravity, but also sort of regret. Now, the ratio of depravity to regret is very high, and to be honest, until later in their discography, that feeling of regret won't appear again. I feel that Daughter's music, or rather extreme music in general, exists on a sexual continuum. Some forms of extreme music are just extremely depraved, while others reckon and struggle with sexuality. Daughters is both, but certainly less of the latter. Canada Songs presents a band still in early infancy, but it shows potential. Here we have John Cyberson's best performance on the drums, and he'll be the glue that ties together the other Daughters albums. Nick Sadler experiments with bassier guitar tones and reverb sections, but the next album is about to take one element and make it a lot more prominent. Chapter 4. Hell Songs. Daughter Spelled Wrong is the most iconic opening. It sees Alexis fully embrace clean vocals, and the effects are chilling. The lyrical content, now that you can fully comprehend it, hits harder. Alexis embraces all the evil of Canada songs, but without the regret. There's no shame now in the title he accepts. He's a murderer, a demon, and a sinner, and he's proud of it. Yet Alexis's voice is like a preacher's. I will say that Hell Songs is my least favorite full-length Daughters project. It just feels like a half-assed, slowed-down grindcore album with clean vocals. Fiery, for example, has some interesting imagery, but it really doesn't have any themes that it points to. The ending vocals are really awkward too. Recorded Inside a Pyramid has this incredible flow switch, which shows the math rock roots of the band. There's this one lyric that stands out though. I've been touching myself all day with a hammer and nail. This of course connects back to the theme of depravity, but I also believe the hammer and nail is a reference to the crucifixion. It's a parody of Christianity, which is something we'll see more in depth. X-Ray, once again, is pretty forgettable. It has a grindcore song length without the substance of grindcore. Fiery Snake Woman is more interesting. It's actually a motif that will show up again in one of their music videos. It portrays women as reptilian, as dangerous. They'll consume you, and then you'll burn. It's like Alexis is blaming women for the pain they cause him, as if his sexual depravity is their fault. Keep that in mind as we'll return to it. Providence by Gaslight is once again a disturbing song on blaming women for sexual addiction. He describes his lover's raven breast as empty and cold. The woman in the song is also whining and kicking and hurting herself, but apparently this is just normal for Providence. I think that the idea that cities are corrupt are some things that Daughters will explore and you won't get what you want. Hyperventilation System builds on this theme, as Alexis Marshall concludes that love is a disgusting thing. I think this goes back to him blaming his lovers for sexual problems. There's a line here that I want you to keep in mind. The rapist of my being. It's a horrible image, one that will become even more disturbing as time goes on. This lyric also implies that Alexis feels that he's getting assaulted as well, that love is a brutal physical assault on the same level as rape. Crotch Buffet features the fetishization of virgins with lines like, when you are inside, it is pure. Alexis also says that he wants warm blood and his lover to spread your arms like Christ. It works really well with this deranged preacher delivery. Cheers Prick is the longest song in the Daughters canon so far, at a whopping 6 minutes long. The song is structured by an intro, moving to Limbo, then Purgatory, then Hell. It has some of the most killer riffs on the entire album, with Sadler playing with surprising speed. Limbo establishes some sort of phantom standing in the doorway. Purgatory establishes the narrator's helplessness. The narrator is unable to speak. The Hell section might be one of the closest connections to suicide on the whole album. While Canada songs featured bigger themes of self-harm, the hell section of Cheers Prick features Alexis wishing me put on the guillotine. My favorite lyric from Cheers Prick is, "Tie a chain around my ankle and take me out to the blackest deep sea." The chains around the narrator's ankle could connect back to kink imagery, which makes sense due to the depravity of the album. If not, it's still a horrifying image. Then there's this reverb section that's just beautiful. There's a lot of strange percussion and it's pretty quiet. The Fuck Whisperer is the final track. It depicts an act of sexual assault as a shipwreck. There's a very telling line that reads, "I've studied the weakness in your defenses, and it's already too late. I've penetrated the hole, and it's already too late." I already feel that Canada's songs was sexually immoral, but Hell Songs takes that to a new level. These acts of sexual depravity aren't just weird and absurd, now they're not consensual. It also begins two important motifs in Daughter's later music. Number one, Alexis's issue with sex not being his fault, but rather being the fault of women. We can see this from songs like Hyperventilation System. Love to Alexis is an ugly thing. Providence by Gaslight is some sort of fucked up love song about his lover being cold and empty. And this one's somewhat similar, but it's women as snakes. They're explicitly referred to as snake people here. Snakes connect back to biblical sin and Satan. But Hellsong depicts Alexis as a perpetrator still. It's not as if these women come on to him. Songs like The Fuck Whisperer establish that Alexis is clearly the one at fault. Sonically, the band sticks to clean vocals from here on out. Alexis's vocal delivery will improve, but there are some great moments on this album. Daughter Spelled Wrong has some of the best vocals in their discography. It's an insane song and probably the one I return to most from this album. Like I said, excluding the 2002 EP, Hell Songs is my least favorite Daughters project. It feels the most awkward. Daughters were in a stage of transition. They hadn't left behind their grindcore roots, so this just feels like a grindcore album with speaking on it. If you're into that, and many fans of the band are, then you'll like this album. But stylistically, doesn't really mesh well for me. And the delivery of these lines of sexual evil don't feature a sinister enough backing. Don't get me wrong, this album is extremely disturbing, but it's about to get a whole lot worse. Chapter 5. Lead up to self-titled. So, Daughters has built up a decent name for themselves as Rhode Island noise rock royalty. It doesn't sound like much, but strangely Rhode Island has a pretty good extreme music scene. One artist in particular will become pretty important to understanding Daughters' later work. So, after Hell Songs, what should happen next? A band that has always prioritized innovation and new soundscapes had to go somewhere new. But Hell Songs had such a unique sound. What was there left to explore? Nick Sadler was sick of playing the noisy guitar parts required by Hell Songs. He wanted to do something more conventional. They would find inspiration when they covered Marry Me, Lie Lie by The Birthday Party. This would cause a rift with Alexis Marcel. He called the mainstream sound of self-titled shit. It's not even shit, it's less than shit. In fact, this would be the album that would cause the band to go on hiatus. I, however, despite what Alexis has to say, am a huge fan of this album. So with the context and a bit of the aftermath being laid out, let's break this album down. And break down why it's an artistic achievement. Chapter 6. Self-titled. The Virgin is an absolutely wild song. It establishes a very important character. His name is Paul. He's a virgin. His hat's made of fire. He's morally questionable, as we learn that he doesn't really know what the difference is between right and wrong. The end of the song notes that Paul is naked with a handgun on your front lawn. Nakedness can imply vulnerability, while the imagery of the handgun implies suicide and violence. It also connects back to feelings of lust. Paul, on the other hand, can represent a lot of things. It could be Alexis's mental health, or it could be a moment of self-awareness. Paul could be a Daughters fan, a suicidal incel. No, but seriously, sonically, The Virgin is a big improvement. All the tones are way more bassy, but they still have that nice noisy texture. John Syverson is also insane on this song. His drums are fast, pounding, yet not intrusive. This is certainly their most approachable album. The next song, The First Supper, is inspired by the 90s western Ravenous. It features something really cool for a Daughters song. A chorus? That's right, this song has a chorus. When Sadler decided to use less noisy guitar tones, he also made sure to give these noisy guitar moments more contrast. There's this whole section of The First Supper that's just noisy guitar tones. This contrast makes the noise feel harsher than it did before. The First Supper also has some interesting suicide imagery. This line fits pretty good. You'd welcome death if you could find a noose that fits. Next, The Hit is a lot of people's favorite Daughters song. I'm not the biggest fan, but I can totally see why. The riff on the hit is extremely melodic and catchy. It's pretty self-aware, as this song is closest that Daughters would ever get to writing a hit song. Lyrically, the song is about a Christian missionary coming across the town. The people of the town are extremely unwelcoming and kill him brutally. They literally drill a hole through his head. It's a unique narrative for Daughters. That's the structure of this album. These aren't stories from Alexis' perspective. He tells them from characters like Paul or the missionary. The people of the town also tell the man that the hands are the eyelids of the soul. It's an interesting way to show what body language is. It also connects back to that Canada song's absurdity. This album is taking the best part of every Daughters album and throwing it together. The delivery of Hell songs, the absurdity of Canada songs, on a backtrack of accessible post-punk music. The Theatergoer might be the most obvious sexual song on the album. It tells a story of a character resting his hand in something wet and warm and asking the woman to move closer to him. But this song also has that element of shame and regret that we've been building on from Canada songs. Alexis notes that it's regret that makes the cab ride home such a drag. The title is also interesting. It could imply a pornographic theater, or just an act of sexual assault. Whatever the case, the action is a spectacle. Alexis describes 6 million jaws hitting the floor when he inserts his hand into the woman's vagina. I think Theatergoer is a song masquerading with this thin film of pop appeal. It's melodic, and I could see someone who likes heavy metal or punk being entertained by the sound of the song, but the content is obscene. Daughters continues that trend into Our Queens, One is Many, Many are One. This song features one of the best riffs on the whole album. It's brutal, it's rough, it's catchy, it's noisy. The lyrics start somewhat tame for a Daughter song, but then the bridge gets chaotic. The lyric that's repeated ad nauseum is, I want in, I want in, I want in, I want in. I want my cock in a hand on a train. So once again, this song depicts a sexual act and also Alexis' insatiable desire for sex. It is important for the post-Daughters era that we understand Alexis is addicted to sexual intercourse. Our Queens also shows that repeated motif of woman as evil. Alexis writes that lips are the wrist, like razor blades. Her mouth is a literal knife. The Dead Singer covers a new subject matter for Daughters, along with some of the typical stuff. I interpret the meaning of the song to be about the death of dreams. There's a person who wants to be a singer, but Alexis says, you can't be that boy, you can't be that girl, you can't be that voice, you can't let it go. There's also some disgusting infantilization of women. Alexis says, hey there little girl, with that charm hanging down around your neck. The song also features one of the poppiest breakdowns. It wouldn't feel out of place on a medical record. It could also be about Alexis' own insecurities with his voice. He switched from extreme grindcore vocals to deranged Elvis over the course of 2 albums. And maybe he's still coming to terms with that. Sweet Georgia Brown is the most Queens of the Stone Age sounding song. It really does feel like stoner rock. I think this song is a spiritual successor to Fiery Snake Woman. Alexis describes the woman, presumably Sweet Georgia Brown, as breathing fire and sweating tar. Quote, she's the Medusa of your deep blue need. End quote. Quote, she'll cut your throat before you could even wish yourself home. End quote. And because Georgia Brown has a business card, we could say that Alexis is afraid of successful, independent women. This song definitely depicts women in their most nightmarish light yet. The final track of the album, The Unattractive Portable Head, features a riff that takes the noisy, fast math rock of Hell songs and places it on a heavy bass line. It features some very intricate writing as well. Instead of being about sex addiction or acts of extreme violence, this song establishes a sense of nihilism. Quote, we near a time when all of us know. When we find out, do we really reap what we sow? End quote. There's also another unique motif that we'll see again and again. The wolves, presumably death, are at the door and hungry, scratching and knocking. It also features this Halloween-esque synth ending. If you listen to the album, you know what I'm talking about. It just follows the trend of Daughters always expanding their sound, and the usage of synthesizers will become important for their next album. And that's the end of Daughters self-titled. Here, Daughters expands their sound palette to be more appealing to the rock sound. The song structures are somewhat conventional. Groovy bass lines, squealing guitars. If you were to start off with the Daughters record, I would recommend this one. The story structures on this album is Alexis talking through people. It separates him from the characters he creates. The character of Paul is particularly interesting. He's the first voice of the entire album. What we know about him at this point is that he's a virgin, probably an incel. He's also suicidal. I think that his hair on fire represents his anger that's been brewing. Paul is an angry person who's very dissatisfied with life. There's also continued descriptions of sexual actions, some consensual, some not. The theater goer is a particularly interesting description. It continues on the theme of shame developed previously, and society plays a bigger role in this album. Society judges Paul. Society judges the Christian missionary. The power of the mob plays a big role in Our Queens. The main takeaway from the meaning of this album is that society is filled with degenerate individuals who are dissatisfied with life. The solution, from their perspective, of this meaninglessness is sexual depravity or violence. Those who try to escape it through alternative routes like religion are killed by the evils of society. While themes of woman as snake play less of a role in this project, fetishization plays a bigger role. In a song like The Dead Singer, innocence is fetishized. Women are also seen as shallow. But this bold new style would break the group apart, and for many years they would be inactive. But when they came back, they would come with vengeance. Chapter 7. Lead up to You Won't Get What You Want. So, as established in Chapter 5, Daughters went on pause. Alexis Marshall and Nick Sadler weren't on speaking terms. Marshall was very against the poppy sound of the album that Sadler preferred. Eventually, a mutual friend of Sadler and Marshall would invite them both to a dinner. Neither knew the other was coming. They settled things and would perform some one-off shows as Daughters again. Still, there was no thought of another album, at least from the fans' perspective. In secret, Daughters began to work and record on demos. Little snippets here, and then they started to leak. In another one-off show in 2015, Daughters played a new song. It was massive. Now the whispers started. Then those whispers became real after more singles dropped. Now we're finally here. The darkest album of all time. Chapter 8. You Won't Get What You Want. The first song is called City Song. It's a great opener and it features some sonic new decisions from Daughters. This includes the usage of synthesizers. As from live shows, I've seen that the dark sound that plays throughout the whole song isn't from a guitar. Then comes a snare that hits like a gunshot. I've listened to this album many times, but every time that snare hits still manages to make me jump. Alexis describes a city like empty glass. City Song follows Providence by Gaslight in many ways. While City Song is more focused on setting the scene of the world and less focused on sex, it's a story about a city. But it also connects to the decay and ruin of urban areas and the fear and discomfort caused by them. It's also incredibly nihilistic, as the glass is empty, not full. Then Alexis moans, scared moans, not like hell songs, moans of anguish. It is complemented by these smooth bongos that just tie everything together. The city isn't the only thing in pain. The trees hang their heads. The wired want faith. Then there's this wave of noise. Somehow, this noise comes out of a guitar. A wall of harsh noise fills the room as Marshall informs us of the darkest part of his city. He screams in pain. This city is an empty glass. The fires are out and the water sits still. It's a world that lacks meaning, but the water implies that something horrible is coming. It just hasn't happened yet. And then it cuts to silence. Bold silence. A group defined by noise goes towards silence as Marshall repeats the refrain. The fires are out. The water sits still. This album is much more narrative than the previous albums. This song acts like a prologue. It sets up the world and prepares us for something to break. It's a world devoid of meaning. Marshall's vocal delivery is dull and energetic, but it's complemented by anguish screaming. Here, Marshall doesn't narrate evil. Every other album, Marshall is the voice of evil, but in City Song, he's the voice of despair. This theme of despair continues in their next song, Long Road, No Turns. Once again, the song starts with a jump scare. It follows with a corrupted disco groove. Yes, you read that right. That's what the members of the band called it, a disco groove. Thematically, it tells the story of people climbing high, then falling far, and of people making mistakes. And that people are only made happy by seeing violence. This violence is against people who have no choice in the matter. They're shackled. There's also this idea of loss of innocence. People are naked as the day they were born. And one of the few things that cheer people up is when people hit the ground harder than they do. And then there's another addition to the sonic palette. Melody. Sadler had said that he liked writing melodic music, but just couldn't do that in Daughters. However, he found a way to apply it. There are these haunting keys that sound like a harpsichord from hell. It fades really well into the next track. Long Road, No Turns builds off City Song by describing the people of the city. It's a city of dead hope. People climb high, then fall hard, and the people of the city are perverse and fucked up in the head. They enjoy violence and watching other people suffer. The painting that City Song and Long Road, No Turns paints is not pretty. It's meant to represent the biblical end of times. It's a world devoid of meaning, and it's turned everyone evil. It's like the world before the flood, except Noah's not there. This all comes to a climax in the third track, Satan in the Wait, the best song Daughters have ever written. It starts with a simplistic drum groove and a droning descending guitar, and then a catchy bass riff. This is the end of times. This is the return of the Antichrist. The length of this song is 6 minutes and 66 seconds. Apparently, it wasn't even done on purpose. It starts with a description of an evil man, a man with a head like a matchstick, and a face so ugly it looks like he was sucking concrete through a straw. A face so ugly a mother couldn't love it. This man is perhaps not yet Satan, but he dreams of it. He sees himself floating. Then there are those glorious keys again, and we learn that the bodies of the evil people are the city, and the city is opening up. The channels are opening up. The world is falling apart, and the Antichrist is rising from the ashes. And the marshal highlights the sins that turned the city into hell. It's celebrity. It's fulfillment. It's the top of the world. Evil one. That's what this song told us. And now people are no longer people with souls. They're just channels and bodies. The simplification of people to their bodies relates to the past of Daughters. Women as bodies. Women as vessels. It feels very similar. Then we learn things that are only going to get worse. Quote, today is going to feel like tomorrow's Sunday. Tomorrow is going to feel like yesterday. End quote. The significance of this song in the band's discography can't be misplaced either. Daughters have never written a song this long. Their debut album was 11 minutes long. This song almost hits that. And then there's an even longer song on this album. This pulls together the 3-song arc set by City Song. The rest of the album will represent the earth turning to hell. It represents a biblical future where evil wins. So where does the album go from here? What stories does the album tell after Satan's rise? Where the last album began, with Paul. The next song is called The Flammable Man. It's a reference to Paul's hat of fire. We learn more about Paul, the main character of You Won't Get What You Want. He doesn't lie, and he's an insomniac, incredibly disturbed. He also moved away from the ocean because he feared a change. This connects back to the water standing still. It's not clear where in the timeline the song occurs, but the water has changed. Satan has risen. And then we learn something new. Paul might not be aware that he's on fire. Paul asks, quote, is something burning here, or is it me? End quote. The song also features the heaviest breakdown the Daughters have ever written. It's because Daughters were willing to use more synthetic sounds and the tools of a studio that this breakdown was possible. The next song is the Lord's Song. It's a song about crying. It could be from the perspective of God. God crying because the world is falling apart. But I don't necessarily believe that's the perspective. I don't think Daughters sees God as a crying being. I doubt they believe in God at all, especially in a world as twisted as this album. They even call God's voice sterile. Even here, Daughters is connecting God to sex. It's something that a band like Swans would do. The next songs after these two are a brilliant cool down. And the first is going to become one of the hardest Daughters songs to discuss. And that song is Less Sex. Haunting blues track that starts with a wall of harsh noise, then blades into clean, cold atmosphere of synthetic drums and vocal chants. Less Sex is difficult. The lyrics build off of previous themes of women being at fault for sexual addiction and abuse, but here, Marshall does take some blame. He let sex into his house. He let sex in from the cold. He let it gain control of him. It's not just control, it's complete control. We've established that Alexis Marshall and the characters of his lyrical stories are often deprived. Some are sex addicts, some are assaulters. But here it's clear that Alexis is speaking for himself. And yet, in this narrative, Alexis still doesn't take the blame. He just says things regretfully, as if the action is already done, as if evil can't be stopped. Maybe that's the message of the whole album. If you can't get what you want, what do you get? You get what you deserve. So the message regarding sex in this album might be worse than anything ever before. Not only victim blaming, but saying that the victim had it coming. It's also a surprising message about love. Alexis lets sex into his heart and regrets it. He can't love and he doesn't love. And then there's the music video. This is Daughter's first music video, with another being made for the final track of the album. It features Alexis dancing in a cold industrial background while a naked woman moves. While the woman moves, there's lots of snake and wolf imagery. Alexis and the woman are never shown in the same frame, so there's an implied separation, whether that be emotional or physical. Alexis hangs his head down in shame at times in the music video. Additionally, the woman starts in a fetal position. Perhaps she's hurt, or she's hiding. Even still, she's at fault. She's given eerie white eyes. Snakes cover her face. All those ideas that started in house songs come to life. Woman as snakes. Woman as the problem. Woman as cold and empty demons. It all comes to a climax here. The industrial atmosphere that this music video is filmed on is a power plant, so it could suggest a power dynamic involved in sex. The next song is the most underrated on the album. It's called Daughter. It warns of a coming war. It could be a reference to the 4 horsemen of the Bible and their imminent return with the Antichrist. It features this groovy bossa nova beat. It makes sense as the song describes the fall of the church. One of the characters in our city tells us there are no saints left. Perhaps people don't try anymore, as death is a common and random occurrence. Another refrain is that love is a tired whore. This is an attitude we get from less sex. Not much left to say. Anyway, let's move on to The Reason They Hate Me. A banger. We're done with cool, clean-cut Daughters. We're back to self-titled. We're so back. Alexis shouts that people can't tell him how to do his job. He can't describe what title to ascribe to these critics because he forgot it. And then there's the refrain. Maybe the sun waits for you to be shown what to do. It's such an absurd line, but it's one that says so much. Maybe the fates of the world, the forces unknown, God, the Antichrist, the sun, are actually controlled by human action. And because all human actions are evil, all things are evil, from sun to the grass. This song is a hard-hitting banger, but it's also incredibly catchy. I could see someone who likes normal punk listening to this thinking it sounds a bit weird, but headbanging nonetheless. And then there's the line, "Don't tell me how to do my job." What character is Marshall playing here? The Antichrist? The sex addict? Paul? I'm not sure. Here he might be playing death. It makes sense with what the previous track Daughter set up. Random, meaningless death. And the spirit of death is frustrated with all this human complaining. This song is a beast, but the next song is a whole new beast. Ocean Song is Daughter's longest song, 7 minutes 27 seconds, so longer than half of Canada's songs. And lucky for us, it tells the story of Paul. We pick up after the Virgin. He's in the driveway, not the front lawn, but he's there. He kills the engine, then looks out the windshield for a while. Then he ignites the car and drives away again. The way the ignition is described is its birth. It's a strange juxtaposition of a beautiful moment in car ignition. The cold industrial pipes. He then opens his car door and steps outside. He notices that the world's changed. I like to think that Paul is witnessing the events of Satan in the wait. The sky is growing darker, and it is darker now than it was last week. There's something ominous growing, and then something tells him to run. Something from deep within Paul's very being tells him to run. Paul's driving again, back to his house. But his house is in disarray. Beds are cracking. Paul wants to cry, but he nurses himself out of running. Then, Paul's youngest child tells him to run. Paul having a family is interesting. He's introduced as the Virgin. Some listeners have theorized that Paul is a schizophrenic who imagined his family. I don't agree with this interpretation, as I feel that it doesn't align with the rest of You Won't Get What You Want. Throughout the whole album, there is no doubt that the actions described in the songs are occurring. This theory throws that off. It is a good way to explain Paul's hat of fire, though. Then Paul begins to fall apart. His shoes fall off. His body breaks from falling over a fence. Now he's barefoot and running. He runs until he can't anymore. The question that's been eating at the listener's mind until this point is this. What is Paul running towards? or away from? Then we'd learn. Paul is running towards the ocean to see if there's an ocean beyond the waves. I love this image because it ties back to the Still Waters of City song, except they're not still anymore. That's how we know that Paul is seeing the events of either Long Road No Turns or Satan in the Wait. The song ends with a repetitive post-rock wall of noise and then guitar feedback. I will say, the storyline of this album isn't very clear. Not every single song in this album features Paul. Some are from Alexis' perspective, some are from death itself, some are from the Antichrist, but there's this clear structure. The first 3 songs are narrative storylines that are more overarching. They tell the rise of the Antichrist and the decay of the world. The Flammable Man reestablishes Paul as a character in our narrative, and the Lord song emphasizes the decay of worldly institutions. Less Sex is a personal statement by Daughters, while Daughter and The Reason They Hate Me are about death's perspective in the whole matter. These last 2 songs, Ocean Song and the final track, finish Paul's story arc. So let's go through it so far again. Paul is a virgin who's on fire, but now he has a family, and then he watches the world fall apart. So what's the final part of his story? After seeing the end of the world, what's next? We find our answer in the final track, Guest House. Paul does what he always does. Run. He tries to get back into his house, but the door is locked. He knocks, but no one lets him in. He's a guest in his own house now. Just as Paul observed, the world is no longer the same. And then we get hit with an orchestra. Paul begs to be let in, but it's clear he's trapped, and there's no hope for him. His family is presumably dead. Paul grieves. He tries to negotiate when Alexis' voice gets calmer, but then his voice goes straight back to anguish. And as the horns play, and this tragedy comes to a close, Paul dies. Paul dies, abandoning his family, while the Antichrist consumes the world. The last track is a powerful artistic statement from Daughters, fully embracing the dramatic with the orchestral flourishes. Just like the unattractive Portable Head, Daughters ends us with a beautiful ambient synth pad. And the chords aren't just moody, they're tragic, and that's how Daughters ends. Chapter 9. The Fallout and Closing Thoughts. Kristen Hayter is an amazing artist in her own right. She made music chronicling her experiences with sexual abuse in the album Caligula, and then documented sexual abuse by Alexis and Sinner Get Ready. There's been plenty of analysis of Sinner Get Ready by people much smarter than me. I recommend checking it out. I'll read some quotes from a much longer statement. I've linked it below, and I implore you and beg you to read it. It's very harsh and it holds nothing back, but it's one of the most powerful things I've ever read. Quote, sex with Alexis was extremely objectifying and often humiliating and violent. I was just a body. End quote. Quote, within a few weeks of living together, he sexually assaulted me while I was sleeping. I woke up to being fully penetrated. End quote. Quote, I was the problem, he was the victim. End quote. Quote, he had been fired from a previous job due to sexual misconduct. He regularly sent photos or videos of himself masturbating to people who hadn't asked for them. He had a reputation for taking advantage of vulnerable women, and that a lot of people felt taken advantage or used by him. End quote. It makes the music of Daughters much harder to listen to, and I even feel sick listening to certain songs by them. It was extremely hard to return to less sex and hell songs. And while I fully condemn the actions of Marshall, it is his evil that made Daughters so fascinating. It just hurt to have it confirmed that Marshall wasn't playing a character in his music. Marshall's excuses follow a common pattern for rapists. It's called DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. Daughters also brings up a good question for consuming music by bad people. This question has been entered into pop culture recently. We have Kanye with his anti-Semitism, but no one can deny Kanye's importance in hip-hop music. We have R. Kelly with his sexual assault, but no one can deny R. Kelly's importance in R&B music. And recently, Sean Puff Combs. So do we stop consuming music by bad people? Do I have to stop listening to Kanye? Do I have to stop listening to Daughters? And honestly, I don't have the answer. Some days I find groups like Daughters to be deplorable. Others I find them fascinating. I'll just say this. Exercise caution. Know that art doesn't only exist within itself. It has real-life implications. I wish I could have covered more with this video essay. I really do. So here's some more recommended listening to unlock the full story. In order to fully understand the Daughters story, listen to Lingua Ignota, Kristen Hayter's alias. Her first album, Let the Evil of His Own Lips Cover Him, is a frightening tale of female serial killers. Her second album, All Bitches Die, is a neoclassical darkwave masterpiece filled with biblical imagery. The next two are particularly important. Caligula, named after the sex-obsessed, violent, manic Roman emperor, it's a haunting album about the horrors of abuse. Sinner Get Ready, an album dedicated to telling Hayter's story, how Hayter experienced spinal injuries from sex with Alexis. Hayter asking God to kill Alexis. This is what you need to unlock the final piece of the puzzle. The piece of the puzzle that can never really be connected. And along with this, I recommend Alexis' solo project, House of Lull, House of When. This album features vocals by Hayter, which makes it particularly interesting. It's a drone noise album. If you're still in the mood for Daughters, without the, evil, I recommend music by The Locust, Chat Pal, and more. I'll link my playlist. Thank you for listening.